Hi, today I'd like to talk to you about improving connection and understanding with your children. If you've heard of NLP before, it may have been through work. A lot of companies use elements of NLP in their training programs to enhance management and leadership skills. Of course, as parents, this is what we're doing with our children. We are leaders, yes? I well remember listening to Sue Knight talking about how NLP can be used to motivate employees. And my immediate thought was, I wonder if this would work to get my kids to do their homework without moaning. And it did. We need to be amazing managers, leaders, motivators, counselors, first aiders, teachers, chefs, party planners. And whereas the needs of employees may change year on year, perhaps, the needs of our children can change weekly. So we need to be creative, versatile, and able to give and receive feedback constantly so that we can be better able to adapt to a changing environment. What I used to find hard, though, was the emotional involvement. We love our children and are acutely aware of our responsibility to raise them in the best way possible. This isn't like the work environment at all, is it? Every failure, every success is personal. It can't not be. Yet sometimes it is the fact that we take everything personally that can get in the way of making the best decisions and responding in the most adult way. We can let our emotions get the better of us and end up sounding more like a child than the child themselves. I've been there. I've definitely done that. One of the most useful NLP techniques I applied successfully was disassociating. Imagine when you are right in the middle of it, feeling their pain, feeling your own pain, and unable to think clearly. Now take an emotional step away for a moment and imagine the scene as if from an impartial bystander or even a CCTV camera. What do you see now? What do you hear? When we do that, we focus on what we observe rather than our interpretation of the situation, which has become clouded by our emotion as a parent. I'd like to take a brief dive into transaction analysis here to explain. We have access to three modes of being. They're called ego states. You have the parent ego state. Now that's all the shoulds, musts, and ought tos, as well as the nurturing, loving parent. So the shoulds, musts, and ought tos, I'm sure, like me, you've used them a lot. And then you have the adult, which is more the computer mind, slightly detached, observes, reports, questions. And then you have the child ego state, which is all those emotions, that love, that hate, that joy, that sadness, all of the emotional side of us. So at any time, we can be in one of those ego states, and so can your child. I'm sure we've all heard a child tell another child what they shouldn't do. When we get into a shouting match with our child, we are both in child mode. At some point, we may move into parent mode and tell them that they must do such and such a thing. But disassociating is to step into adult mode and to observe what's happening, what's being said, what is needed, and to calmly ask questions to seek resolution. This section here is about skilling you up so you have more choices of how to respond to your child. My belief is that the more choices you have, the more chance there is of one of those choices being effective. Let's start with understanding ourselves. When we know ourselves better, we have the tools and vocabulary to understand our children. Thinking back to how much we experience every moment, imagine if we had to process each of the many millions of bits of information individually each time we saw, heard, or felt anything. In order to reduce the amount we have to process, we focus more on the senses we prefer. So these senses, and you've probably heard of these, they're called VAK. So there's visual, which is what we see, there's auditory, what we hear, and kinesthetic, what we feel or do. So it's known as VAK. There's also olfactory, which is smell, and gustatory, taste. Most of us can access them all quite easily, but at different times we will focus more on one than another, and we do tend to have a preference. So if you usually notice what you see, care about how you look, the colours you wear, the visual aspects of your surroundings, then you may well be visual. You will notice messy bedrooms, things not being in the right place, and probably have a creative flair. Is that you? If your child tends to be more visual, they will notice your facial expressions, how you look, how their food looks, and in a general way, colour, form, and the way things appear to them. They will want their writing to be neat and not want to cross things out, and they will learn best from what they see. So diagrams, pictures, and the written word will be good learning tools for them. Their voice tends to be higher and they speak fast, looking up as they access images in their mind. They tend to be very imaginative, so dreams can be vivid and sometimes frighteningly real, and for that reason too, they can often imagine the worst case scenarios. Maybe you are auditory. You love to chat, take a call rather than a text, love music, notice sounds. Is that you? An auditory child will focus much more on what is said, what they hear, how you speak to them, picking up on tone of voice and volume, pitch and pace. They will tend to process a bit slower than a visual child, listening more carefully to the words and thinking about what words they want to use themselves. They often have a lower pitch than a visual child. Auditory children notice noise and sound, so creaky floorboards, the TV on nearby, raised voices, and extraneous noises near them in the classroom will be distracting. They need to control the noise around them. They will want to talk things through and have things explained slowly, and they tend to remember what you say. Or do you tend to be a bit fidgety, find excuses to get up and move around? You may notice being too hot or too cold. Certain fabrics irritate your skin, and you love to be active. You may want to be physical, touching someone's arm when you're talking to them, hugging them, and wanting to sit close to someone. You notice the atmosphere in a gathering and are sensitive to how people feel around you. Is this you? A kinesthetic child is all about the body, movement, touch, temperature, feeling the atmosphere. They find it difficult to be still and enjoy being active. The feel of clothes and other textures may irritate them, as will being overly hot or cold. They will want to feel comfortable rather than look good. Kinesthetic children learn through doing, through working things out for themselves. They want to do rather than see or hear, so school can be a challenge. If they have to sit still for a long time, they can get very fidgety. For obvious reasons, they tend to be the more sporty children. They also find sitting in the classroom quite difficult because they want to be moving. It's a good idea to know your own child's preference so you know what they will be most likely to notice and focus on any given situation. It will help you to match your language pattern to theirs. It will help them to engage with what you're saying if they can immediately connect with that pattern. So let me remind you, the visual child will notice what they see. So a visual child, when you're talking to a visual child, you will use visual language. Can you see the time? What will it look like if you're late? And what you're doing. Have you noticed where your shoes are? Can you see what will happen in this situation? Can you imagine what will happen? So look, see, watch, notice, imagine, picture. Those sort of words are visual words. You'll connect much better to them. So perhaps if you think that maybe if you're auditory, you may be using words like, did you hear me? I told you it's time to go to school. Those are auditory words. Your child, your visual child, won't connect to those as well as if you say, have you seen the time? Have you seen my cross face? Look, let's get on. Can you go and have a look for your shoes? Auditory connecting words are things like sound, hear, listen, noise, speak, chat, say, tell. So tell me about your day. Not how was your day? Tell me about your day. Tell me something funny that happened today. Who did you talk to today? So rather than who did you play with, which is kinesthetic, who did you talk to? Did you hear any good music? Was there any good music today? Because auditory children will be quite noticing, quite musical, probably. Auditory children are also very good at languages because they can hear the words, and they can hear the word endings much better. If you've got words, languages like French and so on, which have to have different word endings depending on what you're talking about. Not explaining that very well, but I'm sure you know what I mean. So with languages, auditory children do really well with languages. Kinesthetic words are things like touch, feel, go. They're sort of doing words. Get, go and get your shoes. Go and get your homework. Have you got your homework diary? Have you got your book folder? Have you had your breakfast? Have you eaten? So all of those sort of things will be kinesthetic words. So by using their language, you make it easier for them to know what you're asking. So be curious as well. What words are you hearing from them? Children will have a preferred pattern, and you can combine all of the three into one sentence. I know lots of mums have said, but I can't use different expressions for each child. Well, you can actually. You can say to one child, look at the time, another one, did you hear me? Tell you it's time for school, and another, get a move on. So you can do that. Or you can put them all into one sentence and say, did you hear me? That's auditory. Just look at the time. Visual. You need to get into bed. And fast. Kinesthetic. So I'm just running you through there the VAK. You probably will have heard about it at school. A lot of schools tell you about it. You'll pick it up in people's language pattern. And also you can ask. But I would say listen out for the words that are used. If somebody's quite visual, they're quite creative, then they're going to be using those sort of words. Use VAK to connect with your child. And in the next one, I'm going to tell you about the next level down, which is what's called the meta programs. Okay? I hope you found that interesting. I do talk about all of these things in my books. So you'll find Be a Happier Parent with NLP definitely has not only a section on VAK, but it also has some quizzes in there that you can use to help you figure out what each of your children are. And also in NLP for Children, which is a workbook for children, there are quizzes for them to work out what they are. Similarly, in Engaging NLP for Tweens and the Engaging NLP for Teens. And then in my more recent books, because Be a Happier Parent was my first book for parents. More recently, you'll find Understanding Children and Teens has a section on this, and Empower Your Kids, a coaching guide for parents also. So you can get all this information from my books. And I would suggest too that if you go to my website, which is judybartkowiak.com, you can download worksheets, and there's also free chapters of books and lots of information that you'll find helpful as a parent. So I'm Judy Bartkowiak, and my company is NLP and EFT Kids. I train people in what I do in NLP for parents, NLP for children, and so on. But also, I'm able to help children have a therapy practice in Maidenhead in Berkshire, and I work a lot online, of course, as well. So do get in touch if I can help you at all.